everybody, it's Emily at ARG Schooling, and today I want to do a wrap-up of what I read the second half of August. So I read 5 books at the beginning of the month, and I read 5 books at the end of the month, and technically we still have a few days left in August, but at this point I know I'm not going to finish anything else because I started reading Ordinary Monsters last night, and that's going to take me through the first week of September. So I figured I'd go ahead and do this today. So let's back up a minute and talk about what I read for the last 2-ish weeks or so in order. So I read The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. And I read this back to back with Just Like Mother. Actually, I think I was reading them at the same time because I was reading this on my Kindle at night, and I was reading Just Like Mother as an audiobook. And I ended up finishing this as an audiobook because I just wanted to be done. I didn't dislike this one as much as Just Like Mother, but this just goes to show you that thrillers are really not for me for the most part. Like I'm still looking for that just perfect thriller that I will really enjoy, but this was not it. This is, and I'm not going to be able to remember her name, this is about a character who is trying to escape her past, and she ends up getting sucked back in when a girl that she considered to be her best friend in college has died, and it died in a similar way to another friend they had in college. So like she ends up finding out about it through a podcast that she listens to, and the podcast is done by another one of her like best friends. And she's been sort of in hiding, and then she comes out of hiding to like go find him so that she could help him with this murder mystery. And it was okay. Like, there was one plot twist I did not see coming, which was nice because I like to be surprised. When I'm reading a thriller, I expect plot twists. I expect surprises. And if I don't get any, like with Just Like Mother, it's a bummer. But this one at least delivered on that. I gave this like a 3.5 because it did hold my interest and keep me reading, but like I didn't really like the protagonist very much. I thought her decisions weren't the smartest. Like she wasn't quite as stupid as Maeve from Just Like Mother, but she was not making good choices throughout the entirety of this book. And I was not, it was not a favorite. I don't think I'll read another thriller for a little while because I just like was not interested in those. And also, those were the only cult books I managed to read in August. That was my theme that I pulled from my TBR jar for August, was cults. And those were the only 2 books I read, Just Like Mother and The Last Housewife. And I was kind of over it after The Last Housewife, and I was not really interested in continuing reading more things like that. So I ended up not picking up another cult book. It's fine. I did read 2. The next book I read was The Partition Project by Sadia Faruqi. This is a middle grade. It had everything in it that I thought would make it a 5-star, but it wasn't quite there. This is a story about a girl who, her grandmother has come to live with them, and she's developing this relationship with her grandmother, and she's really into like the news and current events and being a journalist, and like that's what she wants to do with her life. So she starts interviewing her grandmother about her childhood, and she starts to learn about the partitioning of India and Pakistan. Her grandmother comes from Pakistan, as does her whole family, and so she's learning a little bit about that history that she'd never heard of before. So right there, that is a theme that I really, really like in most books. And I did still enjoy that aspect of the book. I think that part was maybe one of the better parts of the book, was getting the grandmother's narrative, getting her like telling about her childhood, about her experiences. What I didn't enjoy about this was the main character. She was not, I don't know how to explain this. She was just very annoying and very haughty and very like I don't know, she's kind of insipid in some ways. There's a lot of mean girl stuff happening that, like, on the surface, sure, that's a thing that happens in middle school, but, like, the mean girl stuff was warranted because the main character was being a brat this whole book. Like, she's awful. And so the other girl in the story is being mean to her, but, like, not really. She's just calling her out on her crap. And so, like, the mean girl stuff was coming from the protagonist, and I didn't like that. I didn't think it was necessary. I think we could have gotten through this book without that stuff. But she was just very much like, news is better than fiction. Fact is better. Everything should be factual. And, like, she was really rude to her best friend over, like, a novel project they had to do. It was just, she was not helping the story along. And so, like, I ended up giving this 4 stars because, like, I do like the premise, and I did like the stuff with the grandmother. I liked seeing the relationship between the two of them grow, but, like, I did not enjoy my time in this book because of the protagonist. Moving on to another book that I did enjoy. I read Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. I was so excited for this. I read Camp Damascus last year and loved it and have been looking forward to this book. And I'm so glad that I did manage to pick it up this month because I was worried if I didn't get to it this month, it wasn't going to happen until next year sometime. So I made it happen. I had the audiobook for this one, and that helped a lot because it took me a minute to get into this book. I didn't love it as much as Camp Damascus, but I did really enjoy it. This is a story about Hollywood and the whole bury your gaze trope. We're following a main character named Misha, who is a screenwriter, and he has this popular show that he's working on, and he's been building up this relationship between these two characters for, like, at least a season, and they're about to come together and have this, like, romantic lesbian kiss, and the studio's like, no, what if you killed them off in this big sacrifice? And he is very against it because he's like, no, that's the whole thing, is bury your gaze trope, but I refuse to participate in that. I want gay joy. And so he insists on maintaining that this is going to happen. And I don't want to give anything else away because this book is weird. Like, his writing is really weird. He has, like, a lot of crazy ideas and like, I don't want to give any of this away, but it takes some weird twists and turns. If you read Camp Damascus, you know, like, what to expect. This book is weird and gory, and there is some definite, like, high creep factor, very high creep factor in this book. There's some scenes that made me deeply uncomfortable. But it was really good. So I really enjoyed this. It was not what I expect. I don't know what to expect, honestly, reading a Chuck Tingle. Like, I had no idea what I was getting into with Camp Damascus. Loved that. Had no real, I mean, I thought I had an inkling of an idea of what to expect from Bury Your Gaze, and it still took me places I didn't expect. So, like, we'll definitely read any new horror book he comes out with. Very much looking forward to that in the future. And I gave this 4.5 stars. Then I read my 12 recommendations from 12 friends selection this month. I read Lesser Known Monsters of the 21st Century by Kim Fu. This is a collection of short stories. And I was a little bit nervous about this book, honestly, because while I do enjoy short stories, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I'm still not 100%. I think I would call this speculative. Part of me was hoping for more horror than just speculative, because there was a few stories that started inkling, like, getting a little bit into that, but not really. But I think I could call this speculative. There was a few stories in it that I loved. Okay, I went and got my copy so I could tell you which stories I think are amazing. So this is a collection of 12 stories. I loved the first one, Pre-Simulation Consultation XF007867. This was probably my favorite thing in this whole book. I read that and immediately got excited because I thought, oh God, if this is the first story, this is what we're kicking off with, I'm in for a treat. I loved it so much. But then the next couple of stories were just very okay. Like, solid 3. I didn't give anything in this book less than a 3-star. Like, I, in my mind anyway, individually rate each story. So most of them are 3 stars. But then Sandman, excellent, 5 stars. 20 Hours, excellent, 5 stars. Then I read, June Bugs. June Bugs is the longest story in this collection, and I'm not going to say it did anything new, really. Like, this is a trope I've seen done a lot, but I really enjoyed it. And I don't know, I was very engrossed in this one, and it was a little bit unsettling in places. Gave that one 5 stars. And then the last story is Do You Remember Candy? I thought that one was really, really interesting, and I gave that one 5 stars. So, like, this was a solid 4 for me. Like, there was a lot of really good stories in this. So I've never read this author before. I'm definitely gonna search out whatever else they've written and try to read more from them, because I really liked this. So thank you so much to whoever it was that recommended this to me. I really enjoyed it. The last book I'm going to talk about is one I finished literally this morning. It was the last book I'm probably going to complete this month, and that was When We Flew Away by Alice Hoffman. This was probably one of my most anticipated books of the year. I had the ARC, and I was determined to read it before the release date so that I could review it and get that up before it came out. It comes out September 17th, so I went ahead and read it this month, so I was well ahead of the game. And it is exactly what I'd hoped it would be. This book was so good. So this is sort of a prequel to Anne Frank's diary. And I was nervous going into it that maybe this would not be what I wanted it to be. Like, I'm very protective of Anne Frank. I grew up, like, reading her diary. I was very invested in that story and in her as a person. Like, I love Anne Frank so much. And so when I saw this was coming out and that it was written by Alice Hoffman, I got a little bit excited. So this is technically middle grade, but I would say this borders more on YA, I think. Because, I don't know, Anne Frank's diary isn't really middle grade material. I would say that's more for teens. And I think a teen would get the most out of it. But if you, as an adult, have read and enjoyed Anne Frank's diary, I think you would like this too. This takes like the 2 years or so before they go into hiding. So it starts when she's like 11 turning 12. And we're following Anne's life living in Amsterdam, like why they had to move here, what her life looked like leading up to them having to go into hiding. What I appreciated about this, and a thing that I think about frequently, is that a lot of people's Holocaust education is essentially just reading Anne Frank. And that's it. Like, when I was in school, that was the bulk of my public school Holocaust education. Granted, I had a lot more because I'm Jewish and I grew up in synagogue, and like my family talked about it. Like, I had a lot more background information going in, but most of my peers, we read Anne Frank, we watched the play, and that was it. That was the Holocaust education. And so, like, if that's all you get, if that is the only thing you read, you're getting such a small window, and you're missing the build-up, and it ignores, like, what happened. Why do we have her diary? Like, what happened to her? Because the diary cuts off before we get to that. So, like, you don't get a complete picture. It's almost like having this, like, sanitized version of a Holocaust study, because Anne's safe. Anne isn't doing, you don't get to see any of the really scary, upsetting stuff, because it's just a girl in an attic, you know? So this book gives you, like, the lead up and helps get a fuller understanding of, like, why they would have to go into hiding. And it talks a lot about, like, what they lost and like the little bits being chipped away at a time as the years progress towards them having to leave and go into hiding. And it's very very sad. It's more sad knowing what happens next and then what happens after that. Like, knowing the progression of this, it made me very very sad reading about her talking about, like, what is it like to fall in love, and like when will I understand that, and everyone telling her how special she is, and like her starting to have these dreams that we know will never be fulfilled completely for her. And so it was very good. The writing is stunning. I made so many highlights in this ebook. I cannot wait to get my physical copy. I'm going to reread it and then add all the tabs, because there was just so many passages that moved me to tears. That were just so beautifully written. This may be like my favorite book of the year. I don't know yet. We still have a few months to go, but this is up there for me. Like, I'm so thankful that I got to read something this good, that we get to give Anne more of a story. I loved it a lot, and 5 stars. I also got a little ways into 11/22/63 and had to set it aside. I'm not DNFing it. I'm definitely going to pick it back up next month, but I realized very quickly that I do not have the time in my schedule to read that much and still have time to read the book club selection. Like, I don't know, I started it at the beginning of this week and I only got a third of the way in, and I was like, oh no, I need to move on. So I ended up setting that aside. So I'm going to be picking that up again next month, and I'm also currently reading Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro for book club, and loving it so far. So I'm very excited to finish that at the beginning of the month, but I'm not going to finish anything else this month. So I hope you guys had a great reading month. I hope you read some great things in August. Let me know down below in the comments what was the best thing you read in August. I think my favorite, like I said, is going to be When We Flew Away. I can't think of another book I read this month that was as good as that. So that's my favorite book of the month. So let me know what was yours and we can chat about it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.